Jesus is in Jerusalem in the final week of his public ministry. It's Tuesday, and just 3 days later, on Friday, Jesus will be crucified on a Roman cross. Yet, what's evident as you read the account is that none of this surprises Jesus. He's aware of the mounting opposition. He knows the prophecies of the Old Testament, and he knows that he will die. It's in this context that Jesus tells this parable. He's left the temple and the crowds behind. His public teaching is complete. This is a parable for Jesus' own disciples about what it will be like following him when he's gone. The parable opens with another man who's leaving. In this man's case, he's going on a journey. He clearly expects to be away for some time because he entrusts his wealth to his servants. He hands out bags of gold. Each bag of gold was worth more than £500,000 today. These huge amounts would have raised eyebrows in Jesus' listeners. Remember, Jesus lived in an impoverished agricultural country, ransacked by its Roman occupiers. Most people lived hand to mouth. A few landowners had legitimately grown rich, but normally only those with pretty questionable reputations would have had this sort of cash. Either way, before he leaves, the master places significant faith in his servants. He entrusts his fortune to them according to their ability. One servant is entrusted with 5 bags of gold, another with 2, and a finer servant with a single bag. It isn't explicitly clear what the master expects his servant to do with this fortune while he's away. But in verse 19, Jesus tells us of how, when the master finally returns, he settled accounts with them. The servants were clearly supposed to take on the master's mindset, even in his absence, carrying on his work. The first 2 servants both used the bags of gold entrusted to them to double their master's fortune. And so the master commends them. Interestingly, not for the profit they've made, though he was probably happy with that, but for being good and faithful to him. They have proven themselves his trustworthy associates. That is not true for the 3rd servant. Listen to how he justifies his actions. Master, he says, I knew that you are a hard man, harvesting where you have not sown and gathering where you have not scattered seed. So I was afraid and went out and hid your gold in the ground. See, here is what belongs to you. Bandit leaders like this really did exist in Jesus' day. They would swoop in and out of the hills, raiding the farms of others. Bandit leaders were known for their bravery, but also for their ruthlessness. They simply took what they wanted from others and got rich on it. It's not totally clear that this describes the master in this story. He's not necessarily admitting to these practices in verse 26. He may simply be repeating the servant's words back in amazement. So far from reality are they. One way of reading this parable sees the master as being incredibly generous with what he has. Either way, the point is this. The 3rd servant's actions have shown him to be an untrustworthy member of his master's team. By burying what he had been entrusted to him, he'd not been faithful to his master's cause, far from it. He ends up thrown out of the gang, facing the consequences of his unfaithfulness. Jesus isn't justifying either aggressive capitalistic practices or dodgy dealings. His point is that a servant shows faithfulness to their master by following their wishes, even whilst they are away. If your master is a profit-driven business person, faithfulness tries to maximize their profit. If your master is a mafia boss, faithfulness commits itself to the cause of the mob. And let's remember, Jesus is going away. Within a few days of telling this parable, Jesus will be arrested and tried before a series of kangaroo courts. He will be crucified as an enemy of the state. But that won't be the end of his story. On the 3rd day, Jesus will walk out of his tomb, raised to life, demonstrating that not even death can hold him. Yet, even then, raised to life and ascended to heaven, Jesus won't have the same relationship with his disciples as before. Yes, he'll remain with them by his Spirit, but he will be physically absent until the day of his physical return, when he will come back to judge and renew all things. The master in Jesus' parable went away for a long time. Jesus is preparing his disciples for his own long physical absence, an absence that continues until today. Yet, just as the master returned, so will Jesus. Indeed, that is where all history is heading. The fact of Jesus' return reassures us that death cannot nullify all we've made of our lives. But it also prompts a question. What does faithfulness to a master like Jesus look like as we wait for his return? Jesus' parable says faithfulness looks like committing ourselves to what matters to the master, investing what he has given us in the cause he cares about. And so, for followers of Jesus, because our master will bring justice, justice matters today. Because our master will bring harmony, how we treat each other matters today. Because our master will renew the creation, caring for our planet matters today. And because our master loves drawing ever more people into his forgiven, ever-loved family, we commit ourselves to using what we have to share the life that can only be found in him. Faithfulness to the master means using what he's entrusted us to live for him, waiting for his well done. And living for the master starts today.